Is this the most exciting playoff race ever in the history of the Championship? In my opinion, there's about 13 teams from top to bottom who I believe could be competing to get into those 4 playoff spots, whether it's Burnley and Sheffield United from the top 4, or whether it's Sheffield Wednesday or Millwall making a push up from mid-table. Obviously, it's basically nailed on that 2 of Leeds, Sheffield United, Burnley and Sunderland are going to be occupying at least 2 of those spaces. But from 5th down to 13th, there's a whole host of teams who could do it. So I want to make a case for why they may or may not do it, a little bit of a brief synopsis on the team's history in the current division, and my top 2 picks for this season's Championship playoffs. But I just want to point out a couple of the clubs who at the start of the season people were thinking might be, chance of getting the playoffs. So first off, it's last season's 7th place. They missed out by a couple of points on the playoffs. That's Hull City. They got Tim Walter as manager after Leon Rossini got sacked and ultimately went to League On. Tim Walter was known for having like a very rock and roll style of football. He made Klopp's football look boring, and he came in after a few transfers. A lot of players came out, but a lot of players came in. It didn't work. Luton were another team who people expected to be pushing for that top 6. Edwards got sacked as manager. They sit in the relegation zone. Key players like Adebayo and Carlton Morris haven't performed, and the whole squad is a shambles. So let's start in 5th place with Coventry. Mark Robins has been their manager, or he was their manager for 5-6 years, taking them from League 2 to the Championship. But in the summer, a couple of things happened. So they lost their assistant manager, and they were also expected to be one of the better teams in the league on paper, which normally Robins was used to being an underdog team. So after a first half of the season where they did well on XG and didn't quite get the results, Robins was sacked and Lampard came in. It was a controversial appointment because I was one of the people who thought Lampard has never really had success since that time at Derby. He did decent at Chelsea, he did okay at Everton, but coming back down to the Championship to a squad where Robins seems to have done an amazing job seemed like a bit of a brave idea, but Lampard's come in. Coventry are quite frankly the form team in the league right now. If it wasn't for the fact that Lampard came in after 10-15 games, maybe a bit more, I feel like they'd be pushing much higher up the league. But they're basically the one team in this whole video that I'm discussing who I believe have playoffs nailed on. West Brom are another club with a manager change. Corberan went to Valencia, and you can't blame him for wanting to go to La Liga. And Tony Mowbray has come in as manager. It's unfinished business for him because he was formerly the West Brom manager. And carrying on from Corberan, who transitioned into a bit more of a possession style of football this season, Mowbray's brought in Adam Armstrong in the January transfer window, and West Brom are looking decent. They keep looking like they might tail off, but they keep getting result after result, and they might trudge along and get that 6th place. Liam Manning may be the most underrated Championship manager that there is at the moment. He came from Oxford last season to go to Bristol City midway through. Oxford ultimately got promoted, and in the space of just over a year, Liam Manning has created a really, really good 3-4-3 structure within Bristol City. They're only 2 points off the playoffs. They may be one of the most boring sides in the league, but the football's efficient and it gets results. I genuinely predicted Blackburn to get relegated this season in my 1-24s, and how wrong was I? Eustace did an amazing job with them. He's jumped ship in the last month to go to Derby County, who sit in the relegation zone. So Valerian Ismail's come in. He's a manager who did well at Barnsley. He then went to Watford and he did okay there, and he changed his whole style of football. In between those spells, he managed West Brom and he did okay with them after they got relegated from the Premier League. And I really don't know how Blackburn could do from this point onwards. Valerian Ismail could take the team to another level and really propel them to the playoffs, or the season could just tail off. I genuinely am not sure. I reckon that they're going to miss out on the playoffs. Sitting in 9th, we have Middlesbrough. Michael Carrick has had, 2.5 years now, or about 2 years with Middlesbrough. They've seen the highs of getting the playoffs, seen the lows of missing out on the playoffs last season. And I really don't know where I sit with Carrick, because they play this ultra-attacking style of football, but time and time again the defence seems to be leaky and seems to concede silly goals. And they're currently 5 points off of the playoffs. So, it's going to be at least 2 more game days where they're going to actually be able to creep into them with good results. They have quite a fair bit of squad turnover, it feels like. Every season it feels like they've got a different front 4. But ultimately I think Middlesbrough have a top 6 squad in the league, so if Carrick misses out, that's potentially time up for him. On 49 points in 10th is Norwich. They got the playoffs last season, finishing 6th with David Wagner. It was a boring, direct, meh style of football. Johannes Hoff-Thorup has done a decent job with them. They've signed quite a few young players in the summer, with a few old players like Ashley Barnes leaving the club. So it's a transition season for Norwich. If they get playoffs, that's amazing. I do think that they might narrowly miss out on them this season, but to caveat that, I think that next season they're definitely going to be in the top 6. So the Top 20 podcast famously predicted Watford to get relegated this season. Not many people could really disagree and fathom a good argument against it, but Tom Cleverley has done an amazing job. He's been at the club for over a year now. He's really instilled a good style of football with them, playing a 4-2-3-1 or 3-4-3. Chats for Tadze is a key player for them, and he's been criminally underinvested with the squad because Kone left last season, so did Asprilla. That brought in about 20 to 25 million for the squad, and since then they've spent about 2.5 million, so the squad's been cut, but Cleverley is doing well. And Millwall on 48 points are a bit of a surprise package, you could say, because they've got Alex Neil as manager after Neil Harris had a decent start to the season. Alex Neil's stock as a manager has not been that good since maybe when he got Norwich promoted about 10 years ago. So I feel like as a manager he's good, he's quite a steady character, he's not going to be too attacking, if anything he's quite conservative with his style of play. But this Millwall side seems set up for him because he's quite a passionate manager, but first and foremost he wants his players to follow the instructions. Now that's what he's going to get with this Millwall side. They are only 2.5 wins, so like 2 wins and 2 draws away from the playoffs. I don't think they're going to reach them, but they're definitely in with a shout. They're less than 10 points away with 10 games to go. And joint on points with Millwall is Sheffield Wednesday, with Danny Rowe. He's really seen an overperformance from his squad, because I don't think that this squad is necessarily even in the top 20 in the Championship. I believe it's one of the worst Championship squads on paper, and that's testament to how good Danny Rowe has done with them. Obviously, there's rumours that it's going to Southampton. They came up when they sacked Russell Martin, and the new manager might be going, I don't even know the bloke's name, and Danny Rowe might be leaving again. If he's the manager of Sheffield Wednesday at the start of next season, I'll be amazed. But in terms of playoff chat, I don't think they will quite have enough in them. Just like with Millwall, there's quite a big gap between them and the playoffs. It's not exactly unrealistic, but there's some really, really good teams that I've mentioned in this video, so it's going to be tough to narrow the gap. So ultimately, my playoff prediction, I'm going to guess Coventry, as I said at the start of the video, because I think Frank Lampard's got them ticking. It wouldn't surprise me if they're one of these clubs who just have an amazing second half of the season and just get promoted, a bit like Steve Cooper's Forest did 3 years ago or whatever it was. And then the second team, I'm going to go for Norwich City. Now, I don't know what it is, but I feel like Thoropaz's style of football really instilled on this squad. It's not the greatest squad. The likes of Anis Ben Slimani, Jakob Sorensen, they're not amazing Championship footballers, but he's getting results out of this squad slowly but surely. They've improved from the start of the season to this second half. The young players really adapting to Championship football. The 4-3-3 is fluid, with the likes of Callum Doyle at the centre-back and Duffy. They have decent players for the Championship who's been there and got promoted. And I particularly feel like it's going to be harsh on West Brom and Middlesbrough and Bristol City if it is Norwich to get the playoffs, but that's just the way that it happens. And if you're fans of any clubs, which I've mentioned in this video, please put a case down for the 2 playoff teams that you believe that there's going to be by the end of the season, because Sunderland are definitely there. It's going to be one of Burnley and Sheffield United for me to occupy the other 2 spots. I believe Leeds are going to win the title. At the time of recording, Sheffield United have picked up more points in the season than Leeds have, but with that -2 deduction, they're level on points with Leeds. But I feel like Leeds are just slowly but surely going to take the lead over the league. So yeah, thoughts down below in the comments, please. Last week I did a video on that top 4. I've just basically told you Leeds are going to get promoted, but who do I think is going to get the other spot? You'll have to go find out. So thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.